implies? That's my next question. What does the awakening of the hero's journey imply? Do you have any idea? I'll ask a question. You start realizing the necessity to engage in that inner journey, that inner battle. What does that imply?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness, okay.
An unavoidable challenge.
An unavoidable challenge, I like that, yes. An unavoidable challenge. Accept to be challenged. I'll come to that later. Very good, yes.
A choice. A choice.
A choice, okay.
The need to do something.
The need to do something.
Opposed to sitting
Yeah,
back.
I need to go do something. Absolutely. You're going to be saying, oh yeah, well that's it. We have to take responsibility. Because you have to embrace it, take responsibility. What does that mean to take responsibility? Because it's a word that people hate. Okay, so what does it mean to be responsible?
That challenge comes to you and you have to respond.
The challenge comes to you and you have to respond. Okay?
To acknowledge you have to face it versus thinking that it's happening to you.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's very true.
Maybe a sense of like having to rely on yourself, relying on yourself, or other people relying on you.
Yes. Okay. So, the concept of responsibility comes with the idea of we tend to do what we love. So, responsibility is to embrace what we love. So, we need to fall in love with the journey. Do you understand? Love not, oh, hey, wow, great, I love this. No. Love as in, the determination to do not what we like or dislike, but what we should. That's why we talk about philosophy. It's the love of wisdom, not I like wisdom. Because you fall in love with something you don't have. Responsibility is falling in love with something that you seek. Do you understand? It's interesting for me that the concept of responsibility relies on the intelligence of the heart. Then the head will analyze and will make a plan. But the head doesn't, if the head chooses, the head will always choose what? Logic. What kind of logic? What's easy? The logic of the mind is, let's figure out what's easy. As you say, go with the flow. Or excuses. Logic is very good at why not? But the heart will accept the challenge, the test, the trial, even if it looks unsurmountable. The head, if the heart has chosen, will find solutions. Do you understand? So, taking responsibility comes from an act of the intelligence of the heart, of falling in love with that which we want to achieve. In this case, our own development. The contribution to the world, changing the world we live in, changing ourselves in that process, and so on. That's being responsible. Responsibility also suggests the idea that we need to go into the difficulty or the challenge of life with what we have. Nobody's perfect. What we have means the qualities you have. Everybody has inner tools, I call them. Inner weapons, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Those are images used in a lot of symbolism and mythology. And it's to go. It's better to have a broken knife than no knife at all. Do you understand? And so that we then accept to engage in whatever battle is in front of us. If I wait for all the stars to be aligned, to have everything ready, perfect, the weather is perfect in Ireland, perfect weather, what happens? Nothing is the same Dublin. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Right? So this is why I'm trying to explain responsibility is that it's messier than we think in its execution, but it's very clear in its understanding from the heart. Because we serve what we love. We put ourselves at the service of what we love. Not anything. If I don't love the collectivity, justice, goodness, kindness, if I don't fall in love with what I think is right, I don't do it. Because everybody intellectualizes about the necessity for the planets to be respected. Are we respecting the planet? Don't answer that question. I mean, do you understand? It's not that intellectually everybody doesn't agree. A lot of people agree on a lot of things. Still, we still continue behaving in a way that it is for me. The rest, well, we'll see. So that's why responsibility is a beautiful concept. When we don't take responsibility, what happens? You're giving the lecture with me here. What happens when we don't take responsibility?
There can be potential for consequences that are worse than otherwise.
Okay. What else?
You get stuck in the life. Stuck in the life.
You stay stuck at some point. Yes. Yes. You go backwards, in fact, at some point. Yeah.
We rely on others and it adds to confusion.
Okay. Here's a very important, interesting point. We start relying on circumstances to help us to do whatever we need to do. Yes? Instead of taking ownership. That doesn't mean we shouldn't get help, yes. But we need to take ownership of what's ours. Okay? So, the danger when we don't take responsibility is that we become dependent on circumstances. To the point of being our circumstances and not ourselves anymore. Do you understand that? So people then blame their circumstances for what happens to them instead of impacting their circumstances and gain a level of independence from them. There's a famous joke in Ireland, it's not the weather that's the problem, it's the gear that we have or don't have. But that's a simplistic example to explain that we blame the weather. No, we should be intelligent and accept that it's going to change. It's a simple example, but please understand this in life every day. But often we format things in a certain way and we want these things to happen that way. When they don't, we feel irritated, annoyed, life is against us, nobody loves us, etc., 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 etc. That's not the case. The challenge is inside ourselves, not outside. According to this method of work. Do you understand what I mean by this? When we don't take responsibility, lives become bland. There's no color, whereas there is no challenge. Do you understand this? That leads to indifference. And indifference leads to this enormous tendency of the modern world to put everything down. Everything that moves, we put it down. Criticize it. So there is a certain level of derision. Everything, ugh, who cares? So that leads to other problems, which is the other extreme or excesses. To make our life look colorful, we go on the other extremes, which is what other extremes? Alcohol, drugs, etc. etc. The list is very long. And then we go on these extremes and then come back to be bland again. And we go from one extreme to the other. Do you understand what I mean by this? Huh? Some people become what I call adrenaline junkies, and they get higher and higher bungee jumping. Because we need to feel something more and more and more and more, because life is bland. In reality, we are not facing ourselves. If we face ourselves, it's not bland, I can tell you that. Do you understand what I mean by this? Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yes.
this is a silly but simple question. How do you face yourself?
How do you face yourself?
Yeah.
Buy a mirror. No, I'm just kidding. Joke. Alan, joke. Don't joke. How do you face
So
yourself?
just what you said, yeah, what if you face yourself, what will not be blind?
Yes.
How do you face yourself?
So, the first exercise of facing yourself is ask yourself questions. Do you understand questioning? Questioning means if you start questioning yourself about how you see things, you do things, what are your values, your ideas, are they yours, are they imposed by the world you live in, you're starting slowly, the varnish of yourself starts cracking. Do you understand the varnish? So because suddenly you realize that we tend to go with the flow, with the ideas of the moment, and we embrace them, whether they are good, bad, or ugly. We commonly call it fashion. But fashion is not only in clothing, it's also in ideas, in behavior, etc. Okay? To the point that we lose the ability to differentiate and have an opinion that is educated and ours. Do you understand? That's the starting point. It's a starting point. And when you're going to do that, when things are going to crack a little bit, not big deal, huh? You're going to start looking at yourself in the mirror and realize that you have fears, shortcomings, that you have difficulties, and because now you're able to accept them, you say, I've discovered a shortcoming today. This is my exercise of the evening. What have I done today to become a better person? I discovered something today. I tend to be shy. I'm just using this as a simple example. And I give this as a personal example. When I was a teenager, I was shy. I mean, I'm an introvert by character. But you know that's not possible. Yes, by temperament, sorry, not by character, by temperament. My natural tendency is to, I like my own company and I'm fine. Okay? So my exercise was to get out there, to talk to people, and at the age of 18, I took that first challenge and I gave a public talk on the Knight Templars. I was 18 in Brussels. Because I accepted that I had to talk about something. And more or less at the same time, I took one of the students in the school that I was in and started talking to that person for 2 hours. I nearly killed her, but that's okay. I wasn't that shy, I just was introverted. I didn't see the point. And my mentor said, well, try. And so I tried. And I live in a family of extroverts. My dad could have a conversation with a lamppost. So, very extrovert, Italian from Sicily originally, and very extrovert. My brother, my sister. I'm not. So I said, okay, that was annoying me, that extroversion. And instead of being annoyed by it, I said, what can I learn from that? And obviously my brother had to learn to shut up, but that was difficult for him. And it's a simple example just to explain that. So the first exercise is that. A bit of introspection, a bit of reflection, and you're going to discover a list of 5 things, 10 things you don't like doing. Yes? You make that list and you say, I'm going to take the thing that it's easiest for me to overcome and work on it. You're facing yourself, you're facing what you don't like, which is generally based on the ego being too lazy to do it. Then you go to the next one. So after you've done 10 things, I'll give you more. For the moment, 10 things is enough. But the reflection, introspection every day, even just for 10 minutes, is enough to start. Because you're going to discover things, inevitably. When people say to me, describe one of your fears, and they tell me, I have no fears. That's not possible. So that means that person is not reflecting much, or doesn't want to reflect much. But when the events come, your fears will explode. Huh? So if you learn that you have fears and you know what you need to do to learn slowly to master them, well, you navigate differently. Do you understand? I mean,
because I always think if when a fear comes up in me, it's giving me like a signal to break through something.
Sometimes, but you need to know how to break through.
Yeah, for sure. But the fear is there to be overcome, otherwise
I'm never afraid of fears. Understand? I'm not afraid that the fears come. What I'm afraid of is that we're afraid of our fears, because then we panic, and if we panic, we do nothing. Because panic technically is being afraid, is the fear of fears. Called panic. Yes.
Maybe panic would do the worst possible.
Yes, panic is not good.
But,
That's why a lot of people learn how not to panic is by training. That's why in earthquakes, let's say if you compare some countries, Japan, they have a lot of earthquakes, but they limit the damages because they are very, very well trained. So they know how to behave in extreme situations. In some countries they don't, and it's catastrophic. That's just an example. Does that make some sense? So, when you say face yourself, at the beginning is face your fears. The first thing you need to develop is courage. After that, there are many other things, but that's the first thing I tend to recommend. So where I was going is to get to the point of taking responsibility of ourselves. The good, the bad, and the not so good. More we deny that, more we become, I say in English like a blob, amorph, in front of life. What is sad about this, joke aside, is that we have a younger generation of people that feel useless. So they don't feel, useless means helpless. What do I do? They have loads of dreams, but they don't know how to manifest them. And so this is well kind of studied now, and I see this a lot in dialogues in class, that they are inspired by beautiful things, but they don't know what to do and how to do it. They don't know what, they can't face the effort that it takes to fulfill what they love and what they want to serve. The beautiful thing is that they dream, which is good, and they are inspired, that's good, but also we need to strengthen our character to be able to fulfill those aspirations. And that's education. Yes, do you understand? So be careful, we live in a society of hyper-consumerism, and we are made blander and blander, softer and softer, more and more relying on circumstances and less on ourselves. We are losing our freedom. That's what Plato said 2,500 years ago in the Myth of the King. Or the Matrix, and if those more recent. So where are we leading? We are leading towards transformation that will lead to transmutation. Do you know the difference between transforming and transmuting? Often people think it's the same, but it's not the same.
Transforming case means changing yourself. It doesn't mean changing other things.
Okay. The word themselves help. Transform means change the form. So the form means the way you're doing things, you see they are not good, you're trying to gain a new way to do things, inside and outside. So I'll take the example of courage. Let's say I'm a bit cowardly. I'm not insulting anybody. I'm talking about myself. So transformation is that I'm going to start acting with courage, so that I gain courage. Yes? Transmutation is when I have courage. That is, say, I have a quality that becomes irreversible. I can activate my courage at will. Do you understand the difference? Most of us are in a process of transformation. It's very difficult to say that I have a quality and it is irreversible yet. Do you understand the difference? That's the journey from transformation to transmutation. The alchemists talk about the transformation of lead into gold, symbolically. So first you mold the lead. They say you mold the material at your disposal, and then eventually you transmute it. Yes? Do you understand? Do you understand with courage? Most of us are trying to be courageous, and sometimes we are, sometimes we are not. At some point we have courage, it's a quality that is ours, and we can use it at will. It is difficult to get there, I must say. I'm not there, so I'll be totally honest with you. No, because it's not so easy to do that. But we can get closer, to be less dependent on circumstances, basically. Do you understand transformation, transmutation? The first thing to do is accepting the things we are not doing well, and to accept the challenge to do it differently, better, for you and for others. That's the first step, always. And that's the practice of heroism, in a way. It is to accept to engage in that battle of life, to transform, to change the way we do things. What are we lacking most? We lack references, internal references. And the world is saying that everything is the same, so we've lost references. We don't know what's what anymore. We cannot differentiate what's good from what's not so good any longer. So we need to rediscover for ourselves what is good from what is not good for us. This is, as I said before, the drive of consumer society. I worked in a lot of big companies through my career, and people are considered as human resources. For me, it always made me, I'm not a resource, I'm a human being. Okay? So even human beings are resources, they are machines of consumption that fit into a system. Do you understand that? And more people are starting to say, well, no, I don't want that. The reaction to the cave, or to the red pill and the blue pill. Do you know the Matrix? Yes, okay. What they are doing, though, the system is using, deep psychology and psychiatry to understand what are our fears or insecurities and use them to sell us something we don't need. There's a series of documentaries, BBC documentaries called The Century of the Self. I don't know if you've ever seen them. And be in good, strong character mood that day, because the thing they say and how the modern world, i.e. from the Second World War onwards till now, how the knowledge we have of human psychology and psychiatry has been used to manipulate us, basically. And so it's very well documented. It's not the only one, but it's very well documented. So I suggest, if you're interested to understand how that works, it's called The Century of the Self. I think most of them are on YouTube now. They weren't years ago. I use them every so often because they're a good way to reflect on how we got here. It's not just by chance. Nothing happened by chance. And there are three. I've seen three. I heard there's a fourth episode, which I haven't seen yet. So Carol Pearson, who writes about the hero, she says, we educate people to make them cogs into an economic machine instead of developing them as human beings as a whole. I think that statement is quite powerful and unfortunately quite true. And people sometimes fight when I say this, but because it's difficult for the ego to accept that we have been manipulated. But if we accept that we are manipulable, we can change. If we don't accept that we are manipulated or manipulable, we cannot change and overcome. Do you understand that? That's, again, a very stoic way to look at it. But it's important to understand that, yes, the system is quite powerful and we need to understand it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist person at all. It's just that we need to observe the world and observe how it works and observe how it's affecting us and how to be less affected by the world so that we can impact it, as you said, more positively. But if I'm affected emotionally, mentally by everything that's moving around me, my ability to impact is very difficult or very low. That's why the journey of the hero is internal and then naturally external. So it's a double movement. It's internalized and externalized through our actions. Somebody mentioned about the fear of the mystery. There is an enormous fear to engage in something that we don't know the outcome. And I see this in work a lot of time. People, I can't do this because nobody told me how to do it. But not everything can be told, written down, processed with documentation. It's impossible. There are always going to be things that are not in a book somewhere, or somebody knows about it. We have to figure out what to do with it. And it's the same inside. But this is to an extreme. We want to know what's going to happen, but that's not life. Nobody can guarantee anything in life. I'm sorry to say this. The only guarantee we may have is the confidence we have in what we have developed within ourselves, because that you can control, is yours. But circumstances, we can impact it thanks to that, yes. We can make things happen, yes. But often enough, things never happen the way you thought or planned them. Never. Well, in my experience at least. And it's not a lack of planning, no. We need to plan probably 3 times longer than the actual execution, but that's life. Do you understand this? So there's an acceptance here of, I call the unknown, the mystery, or we don't know the outcome. So it's always better to focus on what we can do and how we can do it. Why we can do it, what is it for and how. And this is the steps. Huh? Why do I need to do it? What is it for and how? Most people focus on how, because they want to get rid of the problem. No, it's not a question of getting rid of anything, but to find a solution. And for that, we need to understand the direction it's taking and why it's going that direction, what is it for, and then the how becomes more natural. And the second thing that's important to understand is that, not to focus on the outcome, but focus on what you can do and how you can do it. Because what defines us is not what we do, but how we do it. Do you understand that? Because that reflects our character. So, and I know it's funny because today we live in a world where everything is about results, correct? The funny thing is that results come when we don't focus on the result. Do you understand this? Because it is what we need to do and how we need to do it well, then the outcome will eventually be good. Do you know Guardiola, for people who like football? Guardiola is not focusing on results. Huh? Yes. His philosophy of football is to do things well. Do things well. Do what you know you need to do well. Improve and do it well. Then result will come. When coaches in sports, in anything, just focus on the result, usually that's where they fail.
Systems. There's a book where it talks about rather than results, that the systems in place.
Yes. And this is interesting though. I like the idea of doing things well. Do what you need to do and improving doing it better. But we're so obsessed by the result because we are dependent on what people think of us, because that's why we're so focused on result. How people are going to see us and in which way they're going to see us. We need to focus on what we think is right and do it that way. Not to the detriment of others. I'm just adding that just in case. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Okay. So this, what I've described so far, implies, I'm going to use the word revolution, but understand what I mean. Revolution, the word, has nothing to do with what people think. It's to evolve again. Re, it means again, evolve. So it is to accept that we need to go to another level. It's like a spiral. We need to another level, another revolution of the wheel of progression. And we have to accept that we need to change level. We need to change dimension. We need to change dynamic. It's not the one that was comfortable anymore. We need to seek the next stage, which at the beginning is uncomfortable. And when it gets too comfortable, you need to seek the next one. So we need to gain depth and not simply focus on having and appearing. It is, in a way, to differentiate having and being. Who am I and not what I have? When we ask ourselves and we answer who we are by what we have, titles, diplomas, houses and cars, we're losing ourselves. Who am I? What's my destination as a human being? Nothing to do with the job, the things I do, and no. It is the attitude I have in doing them and the direction I take. It's very different, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But today, the focusing, what have I accumulated that people can admire? But I'm going to be stoic again for 2 seconds. Do you know that in the end, all of that we have has no bearing on anything? Because you cannot take anything to the other side. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that? I'm not saying we should live with nothing, because that's ridiculous. No. But also that there's a relativity in having. We've been told that if you have, you'll be happy. Does that... Again, I'm not suggesting... Okay, the last thing I would say about this, and then I'll answer your question. Some of the Epicureans says we need to learn to live with less. This is something that would be very powerful for today. We will talk about the necessity to be inclusive of humanity as a whole. For that, we need to learn to live with less. And that we're not prepared for yet. Sorry. You're about to ask a question.
Yeah, I forget. I think I was going to say, something that...
Maybe it will come back. I'm just going to conclude at this stage. So, the journey of the hero is none other than the project of self-realization. It is a methodology that allows us to find ourselves and to honor who we are truly inside ourselves. and to develop and gain a new relationship with ourselves, others, the world, and nature as a whole. That's it. That's my conclusion for today. Thank you very much. One last or two questions, and then we can go our merry ways again. Yes?
Yeah,
You remember?
No, it's no, it was something.
That's something else, okay.
There's something later on about like, which also Campbell says about you have a gift and that you have a mission.
Yes.
How does one discover that?
How do you discover your gift?
Yeah, there's something I believe like.
Yeah, he said we all have a mission and a gift or gifts plural.
Like
Gift.
take for example, Lionel Messi is also gifted at football, going on to reincarnations. So that's his gift. But everyone else then.
Yeah,
obviously-
that's his gift,
you know,
but
everyone's gift is not.
What's interesting for me is not the gift, it's how he uses that gift.
Of course, he has to put an extraordinary amount of efforts. It's a
For
otherwise-
sure. And what he does with his gift. Well, I'm not going to go there. I like Messi though,
Well, yeah, I believe in God.
but I'm AC Milan supporter, so I'm not too sure. I'm not joking. Okay, when I say gift, it has little to do with the external gift. It has to do with an internal one. So, the gift for me is related to your character, not to your external gift. Everybody has an external gift of sorts, whether you know it or not. But it's how you manage that external gift will depend on your internal one, which is based on your character. The Greek called that arete, which is strength, inner strength. Moral strength, if you prefer. What's your character? It's like, people say to me, what's that inner gift? What would the plaque says on your tombstone? Your character. Not what you have, not that you have billions or nothing. What was your character? With the billions or nothing. That is who you are, that's your gift. It's very little to do with what you accumulate. Besides, on the other side, the 40 billions will stay for the next generation anyway. Who cares? Do you understand? It's what you do with it that demonstrates your character. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Your mission, in general, most cultures, civilizations, philosophies that I've studied over the years, they all suggest that humanity and the universe is in evolution, in progression from a consciousness point of view. So the direction, the Buddhists call it Dharma, which is the law of life, it is a law of progression. Progression means doing things better. So Plato would say to develop what is good, just, beautiful and truthful. Those are the objective, to bring to the world, through our actions, what he calls four archetypes of what is good, just, truthful and beautiful. So in other words, am I acting justly, truthfully, bringing a bit of beauty and harmony? You understand? It's different, huh? So suddenly the direction you have, by gaining that direction of progression towards a different stage of evolution, what's afterwards, I don't know. At this stage, I'm not too worried. Some call it nirvana, the other, they call it whatever. They are just words to explain that, we're not only this manifestation, that we have a dimension that directs this manifestation. That's what a lot of civilizations say. Some people say that is nothing more than bits and bytes and chromosomes and materiality. I disagree with that point of view for whatever reason. There's a reason for that. But that will bring us to the darkest thoughts if there is absolutely no purpose to life. Life is too complex to have no purpose. Why? No. We have to be humble. We don't know yet. I prefer that answer, personally. I'm not sure what it is, I don't know. Fine. Then you become Socrates. I know that I don't know. But at least I'm trying to know. That's evolution and progression. And I'm trying to at least project four fundamental universal ideas, which is four archetypes and principles. Do you understand? I mean, this is just a framework for thought and for thinking and introspecting for yourself, and then you find your own answers. And I'm just sharing a method more than anything else. Yes.
You mentioned that there was like a constant evolution
Yes.
through progression.
Yes.
And you mentioned that that's based on 4 elements, right? Can
4
you
archetypes.
repeat those archetypes?
So Plato says that they're the good,
The good,
the just,
just.
the beautiful, and the truth.
And so then who is to be the judge if we're talking
Your
about
actions and the consequences of your actions.
But I guess then that's like looking at ourselves. But if you're
No, but
looking
even in the world. Besides, so Plato says that the just, he explains that the just manifest in the world is justice, a search for justice. The beautiful expressed in the world is art, truthful is science,
Justice politics.
and
Justice politics.
justice, sorry, is politics, truth is science,
The good.
The good is
Mysticism.
mysticism. Because Plato explained that these are the ideas and they manifest in the world. Once they are in the world, they are imperfect. The only thing we can do is to evolve to perfect them. Do you understand?
so then evolution does not necessarily mean that progression is positive.
No, progression is always positive. We may not see it though.
Because then my question is just I'm thinking if progression is positive, then who's to judge based on those 4 elements?
Nobody's to judge anything. You have to judge yourself for yourself, okay? So, judgment is not needed. Your actions will create a reaction, consequences. So I'm going to give you a Buddhist definition and a Socratic definition of the same idea. Socrates says, or the Buddhists say, if it's good, the consequences of our actions are going to generate the least possible negative consequences. They call it karma. So that, because when we act, we generate karma, we generate action and reaction. So when we do something, if we do it well, it will generate the least possible friction or negative consequences. It doesn't say perfect, because here nothing is perfect. Socrates says that our actions, to be good or wise, they should bring goodness, to do things well. So what it brings is good for you and for the collectivity. It's the same idea explained in the Greek way, and the other one is Buddhist way. So that's why when people ask me, how do I know what the consequences of what you do? And the consequence of what we do, that's why we need to observe ourselves in action. We need to observe the world and the actions of the world. Most of us live in a bubble of preconceived values and idea of what's happening in the world. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. So first we have to break all that a little bit, like, the cracking I talked about, questioning. Then you're going to see things the way they are, what's good and not good. And then you start working on it. Not everything in one go. Start with 1 or 2 or 5 or whatever you're capable of, depending on your capacity, your ability. Don't try to compare yourself with anybody. Just, this is as much I can do now, in this way. And then when I gain a bit more, I may be able to do a bit more. Maybe somebody else does it better. That's his problem. Because things you do well, he or she cannot do well, and vice versa. We can learn from each other. The important is to compare yourself with yourself. And it's cause and effect. And cause and effect, for me, is very clear. You see the consequences quickly enough. Now, it is true that some things we do have long-term consequences that it takes a while to see. I understand it. So, doing good has nothing to do with good intention. You can have the best intention in the world and put your 2 foot in it. Or your 2 feet are plural. So it's like a good parent, sometimes out of love, they do things, but the outcome is catastrophic. Have you never seen that? It's not that they don't love their children, they do, but that doesn't mean they do it well. So that's why doing good is not just having the intention to do good. Also, you have to do it well, so you have to learn. You have to improve, you have to make mistakes, you have to progress. And so what we do becomes, all the time, when we do it, better. Do you understand this? And this requires patience. Patience. What is patience? And I finish with that. You know what is patience? You want to ask another question, maybe? Okay, wait. Patience. Do you know what is patience?
Giving time.
Patience is to trust in the future. Because patience is that you have confidence in the future thanks to the actions you take today. When we lose patience, we want everything now. That's when we lose patience. That's when we've lost the confidence in ourselves and what is going to happen. Do you understand this? That's why patience requires to trust the future, that based on what you're doing now. Very interesting concept. Huh?
Yeah.
Because, and I think we live in a world where we don't have a lot of that. But it's not our fault or whatever, it's just that's the way it's expressing itself. Because we want immediately everything. Do you understand? So, do you know how to develop patience? Postpone to tomorrow what you would like now. Like for you. So let's say you absolutely want, I'm going to give you a smoker example, nobody smokes anymore, so it's easier. You know, when people smoke, I said, you know, when you're ready to smoke, put it back. Wait 10 minutes. Then an hour, then 2 hours. Postpone. People who drink a lot of coffee, just when you are at your 10th cup of coffee, no. Do you understand? We can do it with chocolate if you like, or bananas, it doesn't matter. You just, for one moment, postpone it. Gain the control for 2 minutes. You'll see. You'll come back and you tell me how it goes.